On this episode of Outside of the Box, Christine recaps the NHRL Round 1 event, sharing stories with competitors from the 3-pound, 12-pound, and 30-pound weight classes.
I hadn't even looked at the rest of the bracket because I didn't even think I was going to be making it into the next part of the bracket. So I had no idea who I was going to fight. Go upstairs and I learned I'm fighting Silent Spring. I'm like, oh, I really should have looked at this bracket.
I should have left William for dead and let him get counted out. But I was like, you know what? It's a prelim fight. I'm gonna have fun.
When I saw them in the bracket, I was like, oh god, all my electronics are cooked. If you look at Undertaker, a lot of it is plastic. So my goal was like, all right, I'm just gonna wrap the entire robot in this tape. So like I had to go with the lighter forks in order to make weight for that entire tape roll that I used. I was really expecting the robot to just burn up and just die in the middle of the arena and a ball of fire.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And I'm sure everybody is really excited to get back to talking robots, especially after just such an amazing round one NHRL event. And I'm going to kick it off as I normally do, talking about the 3-pound bracket, which is obviously the biggest one with the most robots. And of all of that, Pinevictus managed to make it all the way to the semifinals and qualify for the World Championships, which is really exciting. So I'm excited to talk about it, Alex. And you've never been on, so welcome to the show.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks for having me.
Yes, for sure. So there's so many robots in the 3 pounds. I do want to talk a little bit about the prelims before you got into the bracket. I don't quite remember who you fought, but if you want to talk about that a little bit, just kind of getting into those first couple of fights and how you felt at that point getting into the bracket.
Yeah, sure. So it was actually fun. It's a funny story. The first set of release matches, I was scheduled to fight Real Axabit, which was an overhead drill robot, and never really fought an overhead robot. I knew Maka was going to be here. I was a little bit concerned, but I was just glad it wasn't Coldsnap. I was really worried about Coldsnap all day. And so I was preparing for that. I made some top armor configurations. I was trying to think about what I was going to do. And then it ended up getting switched around and I fought Jackalope for my first fight. And Jackalope's a pretty good robot. And it was another vertical spinner, and I knew it would be a driving battle. And I was really excited because I like driving battles because I know my robot can drive really fast, and I always thought I would be like a really good driver if the robot ended up working. And I'm really glad that it did. But it's a funny story. I had a nightmare the day before in the hotel on Friday night, and I dreamed that I lost to Jackalope. And I woke up and I was like, oh man, I need to beat Jackalope in this first fight. And I'm talking with Gwen and we're both really excited. She's a super nice person. But I knew I wanted to win this fight really badly. So I noticed I hit Jackalope a few times and then it ended up upside down. And I ended up just going in for the kill because I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to lose and I didn't want to leave anything up to chance. And I wanted to make sure we wouldn't be dealing with any funny decisions from the judges. So I was glad to get that knockout. And let's see. So then my second qualifier was against Toucan. And we had actually seen Toucan's earlier fight. It was right before I fought Jackalope, I think. And they're a pretty wide vertical spinner. And I was a little bit worried. These kinds of robots are it's always a little risky because they could like break the beater bar, and I don't really want to break my beater bar. But what he did say was they had an Arduino inside of it, and it was like this really cool autonomous weapon control or something. But I just wanted to hit it. So I really just got in the zone. I was like yelling at Liam like, let's lock in, let's go. And then I really just started wailing on that thing. And it was funny because the whole time Brandon Young was right next to me and he was telling me like back off, like slow down. You don't have to do this. but I just wanted to make sure they were knocked out. And I was really happy to get those 2 KOs early in the day and then be able to take it a little bit easier into the next
Yeah,
round.
for sure. It's nice when you go 2-0 and then you have a little bit of a break to kind of sit back and prepare for whoever your first opponent is. And those 2 wins put you straight into the round of 32. So you didn't have to worry about like an additional fight or anything like that.
Yeah.
And your first fight in the bracket was against Sad Octopus. Which was a robot that I really didn't know that much about. And you ended up getting a judge's decision in that one, which is, you know, you said, you never know how the judges' decisions are going to go. But how did you feel overall about that fight?
Yeah, so it's actually another funny story. Right after the Toucan fight, the builder of Sad Octopus, they were scheduled to fight in the cage right after that. And he said, dang, Pinevictus is a really cool robot. I hope you do well. And then, so they ended up winning their fight, and the bracket comes out, and we're fighting each other. So I go up to their table, and he puts his hands in his head, like he was not very happy that we had to fight. But I knew it was gonna be pretty brutal because they also won both of their qualifiers, and they're looking pretty mean. And honestly, that was my closest fight all day. It really could have gone either way, and it was so back and forth. And I remember I lost a belt on one of my drive sides, and it wasn't driving super great. And I was getting a little bit worried because this happened to me against Foxla as well, where one of my drives was down and I couldn't really do as much. But I was super happy to be able to eke out that judge's decision. And man, I was so nervous in the pits after that fight because it took a while for the judges to come out with the scores, and I was just holding my breath the whole time.
Yes. And, you know, if you were paying attention to the bracket, which I'm sure you were, you had to know in the back of your mind that it was very likely that if you won, the next fight would be against Mako. And I know Mako is one of those robots that everybody seems to be terrified of, and for good reason. I think Julian has built something that is truly terrifying. And, you know, I'm curious to know, going into that fight, what were your thoughts? Like, how were you kind of preparing your strategy for what to do against him? Because honestly, like in many fights before that, Mako has looked darn near unstoppable.
Yeah, Mako is a super awesome robot, and I think the 2 fights I paid really closely to were it was actually both of Mako's fights against Eruption at the World Championship. And I knew that this fight would be like very similar because I studied Eruption a lot when I was designing Pinevictus. I really like that robot, and it's a very similar archetype against Mako. And really what I was worried about was getting sawed and the saw hitting my weapon belt. That's what happened against Eruption in their first fight. And if he's not spinning his weapon, he really can't do very much in terms of controlling the fight. So although I had my top armor, I had a similar like spring steel TPU sandwich thing that I concocted. I knew it didn't cover my belt, and I knew if I got hit there, it would be really bad. So the whole time I'm just thinking, I do not want to get hit. I do not want to get hit. And let's make sure that doesn't happen. I don't want to get pinned. I don't want to give him any opportunities to even get a chance on me. And before this, I hadn't really been box rushing very much. I was kind of just like start in the corner, make sure everything works, and then just start the fight. This time I was like, let's just go for it. I just want to see what happens, and it honestly was a blur. I don't remember like being in the fight and watching it back. I don't even know what I was thinking. I'm just moving so fast I can't even keep up with myself. So I think I was just really in the zone for that.
You definitely must have been, because I have to say, like, I've seen a lot of Mako's fights, and I don't feel like I've ever seen Mako in that state at the end of a fight before. I mean, it was pretty wrecked. I'm pretty sure Julian may have had mixed feelings after that destruction, but it had to leave you feeling pretty good to just destroy a robot of that caliber going into your fight with Coldsnap.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember what Julian told me. I think he said this was the first time Mako has ever been knocked out before. And I was I was just in disbelief. Like I didn't think that I was going to do that. And I knew I might have a chance, but really Pinevictus's record was not that good. The ranking's not that good. Something dumb always happens. So I was just worried about something dumb going wrong, and not so much about like, could I even beat the #1 ranked Mako? That wasn't even the main thought in my head. But yeah, it worked out pretty nicely.
For sure. And I know earlier you said Coldsnap was a robot that you were worried about. And it's just unfortunately one of those things that usually when there's a robot that you're worried about, you're probably going to face it if you get fairly deep into the bracket. And so that did end up happening. Um, what were you feeling before, during, and after that fight? Because I mean, given that that was like the one that you're like, thinking, how were you feeling about that?
Oh boy, yeah. Yeah, Miles has been fighting Coldsnap at all these other competitions around the country, and he's been posting these YouTube videos, and I didn't know how to beat it, and it seems like no one else knows how to beat it either. And I actually texted my little brother a picture even before this event. The whole event, Miles posted a picture of Coldsnap in the Discord. I told my brother, darn, I might have to fight this thing. I don't know what to do. And he said, yeah, that one looks really cool. It looks a lot better than yours. So at least I had that not vote of confidence for my little brother. But really I just wanted to try and control a fight and hit him hard. And let's see. So at the beginning of the fight, I go in and he gets under my wedge and I do a little gyro. He gets part of my wheel. This is already really concerning because the whole fight could have gone like that. And then I got a little pop on him, and then there's a really big hit, and then he just stopped moving, and I was like, is he stuck? Like, what's going on? And I tried to hit him one more time, but then he ended up tapping out. And I just couldn't really believe what happened, because it's like, did I just beat Colts? And this was also the fight to qualify. In my head, I was thinking, darn, it's really cool to make it to prime time, get top 8, but this is Coldsnap's like fight to win. But I was just really surprised that I was able to get that one out. And what Miles told me afterwards was that we hit so hard that some of the components fell off of his receiver, and I was just like, wow. And that had never happened to him before, so it was just really cool that such a big hit could do that to him.
Yeah, for sure. You always love to see that when you're a builder and know that your robot has that kind of power behind it. Again, I felt like that was probably a confidence building match. But your next opponent was Silent Spring and Jameson Go, who has close to 20 dumpsters at this point, and is just an insanely talented builder. Not unbeatable, but still an insanely talented builder. How were you feeling about that one? I mean, me personally, like, I'm not a good builder, but it is certainly a dream of mine to fight Jameson Go just to say that I did it. So what were you feeling about it?
So it's actually funny. After, or I guess before the Coldsnap fight, I hadn't even looked at the rest of the bracket, because I didn't even think I was going to be making it into the next part of the bracket. So I had no idea who I was going to fight. And I really thought Coldsnap was the only undercutter I was going to have to fight. I told Miles, I was like, let's go. I don't have to fight another undercutter at least. Go upstairs, and I learned I'm fighting Silent Spring. I'm like, oh, I really should have looked at this bracket, man. So what I had to do is, so basically I had two copies of my robot and one wedge. The first copy kind of got ruined by Coldsnap, so I just swapped the wedge onto the second robot. And I don't know, all I was thinking was, well, first of all, I was super happy that I qualified. That's been a goal of mine for like the 3 years I've been doing this now, and I was I was just on top of the world. But I was thinking like, you have to beat the best to be the best, and I really looked up to Jameson, and I want to have his like, I want to be like him when I grow up, basically. But I want to show up to NHRL and everyone knows that I'm a contender in any weight class, any robot that I bring, and I just I really look up to him. So, and it was really exciting to be able to fight him again. I fought him in 2022, I think, with my very first 12-pounder. It was very bad. He ripped out the weapon. It was embarrassing, and I was not very happy because I didn't want that to be like what he remembered of me. So this time I just wanted to give him a good fight, and I knew if I did the same thing against Coldsnap, maybe I could do the same thing against Silent Spring. So the whole time I was just thinking, keep hitting him, and hopefully the weapon doesn't go down. And what ended up happening is in one of the hits, he broke the beater bar and actually bent part of it. And when it bent, it was able to hit the frame of my robot, and that's when all that smoke came out. So that first minute of the fight, that was probably one of the best minutes of my entire life. Except I remember hearing, and I was going crazy on Silent Spring, but then I heard the 2 minutes remaining warning, and in my head I was like, how was that only 1 minute? That felt like an eternity. And then right after that, my weapon started smoking. So after that, I was a little bummed. I was able to get a little bit of control with my wedge, but after I got flipped over, there wasn't a ton I could do. But I was still super happy with the result because I think if I could have kept up the performance from the first minute in the other two, I think it could have been pretty good. And I know next time I will not lose to another undercutter.
Yeah, I mean, you have to learn from those lessons when the fight doesn't exactly go your way. And I know JMO is very big on always learning from those lessons. So certainly, if you aspire to be like him, then I'm sure that you will do that as well. Yeah. So I mean, you qualified. That's great. What is your like thoughts on finals, which are very far away at this point? But is it your plan to potentially try and come back and test the robot out and see if you can do better or try other things with it in the meantime?
Yeah, so well, if you had asked me a few weeks ago, no chance I would have thought I was qualifying at this event, especially with all the big names here. And honestly, even of the robots that qualified, like Eruption didn't qualify, even Mako and Coldsnap, I was able to beat both of them and prevent them from qualifying. But I know if I were to fight them again, I need to be more prepared. And definitely, I think a lot of the work will be in making specialty configurations for different robots. And actually, on Friday, I'm leaving for Motorama, so at least I'll be able to test Pinevictus again. I haven't really had time to make any big changes to it, but in terms of the way in what I learned this event, I really learned that my robot is pretty good. So I don't have a giant list of things to change like I usually do, because usually I come home from an event and I want to redesign the entire thing. But this time I'm feeling pretty confident in the robot, and I'm really happy with where it's gotten to.
Well, I think that is great. And Like I said, round one was certainly an amazing event. I think that the Leatherbacks as a team seem to do pretty well also. So I think that's always exciting when, you're doing well and your teammates are doing well and all of that. At one point, I thought it was going to actually be a sweep all the way across the board. Didn't quite go down that way, but
Yeah.
maybe next time.
Yeah, I was saying the whole time it was going to we were aiming for the Leatherbacks Triple Crown with Liam and Buzzkill and Brandon and Vorion. And what we didn't realize is we ended up getting the Leatherbacks Triple Third, but it's close, it's still close enough. We all qualified, and I think the within the club there's a ton of other members designing their own 3-pounders and other big bots, and we're super excited to start coming back and really start winning a lot. So very excited for once all those robots get finished.
Yes, for sure. Well, we've definitely got some more exciting stuff along the way in this episode, talking about the other weight classes. It was a great event, and March is right around the corner, which is insane to me. But if you are watching this, stay tuned. There's more to come, and yeah, just keep watching. And thank you to Alex.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. So it is time to get into the 12-pound bracket for the round one event of NHRL. And so the funny thing is, it's not surprising that Zack Knight won with Promheta. It's that you, Zach, were not as probably as prepared as you would have liked to be for the event. And it was mentioned a few times during the broadcast. And so I don't know if like you surprised yourself, but it certainly wasn't, I guess, the ideal set of circumstances for you.
It really wasn't. I kind of didn't plan to go to this event. We'd moved the week and before NHRL. So I kind of was just like not in the state to compete with robots. So Ashley really didn't want to miss an event. She has missed very few all time. And so she convinced me to go. Well, if I'm going, I'm competing. So they're pretty much were in their world champ state until they got to the event.
Understandable. Yeah, that's a pretty crazy set of circumstances. Now, I'm curious. We'll get into the bracket in a second, but just getting those first couple of fights out of the way. How was that for you to just kind of shake the rust off before you got into the thick of things?
So that was actually what was super amazing about that first fight is I should have left William for dead and let him get counted out. But I was like, you know what? It's a prelim fight. I'm gonna have fun. And so when I went to go hit him, I couldn't tell exactly where I was in the arena because of how big his robot was. So I missed where I was intending for. He hit me and my BEC wire broke loose off the BEC board. If I would have won that fight, that would have happened first round of bracket.
Yeah, I remember watching that fight, and it's one of those things because it's tough. I mean, especially right out of the gate. I think for a lot of builders, you want to be aggressive. You want to show that like you're in it and not just kind of back off and let yourself win that way. But as we all know, when you do that, at times you can run the risk of it not going exactly the way that you want and cause a problem for your robot. Were
No.
you worried after that happened?
No. Once I got back and I immediately saw what it was, I kind of just like, okay, that's fine. I can live with this. And it kind of like pissed me off enough that it locked me into a mindset that I wasn't in like I normally am going into events because I had done no preparation.
Yeah. I mean, you never know. It's one of those things, you don't know how something's going to motivate you. And obviously, like, that created a level of positive motivation for you going into the bracket fights. Um, what I'm really curious about is, I know that it's always a possibility when you are in an event and you have teammates there, you have friends there, that you may have to fight them. I'm sure for you, it was not ideal to have to do that, especially in the very first round of the bracket.
Yeah, especially against Michael. If it would have been any of the others that I fought through my run, I would have been perfectly okay. But with it being Michael round one, I was not happy about that. Because pretty much every time that we fight, somebody throws a frame in the trash.
Yeah, it's not something that anybody wants to do for sure. And I mean, you know, Promheta and Carmen are both really tough robots. I think that anyone who was watching that knew that it was going to be a really good fight. And I mean, I know how Ashley felt about the situation, and my heart was breaking a little bit too, because it's tough. Like, you want your friends and your teammates to do well, but you also want to do well, and somebody has to win and somebody has to come out of it. I mean, do you think that you were both, kind of feeling like, we're just going to put it all out there and whoever wins wins kind of situation?
Yeah, that's typically how it goes between me and Michael. Like, we respect each other enough so well that the moment those doors close, we know that it's going to be a bloodbath. So like, just give it your absolute all. We're both super talented, and the designs are well proven. So the moment the doors close, it's just two A-listers going at it, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is definitely unfortunate. And it didn't really get any better. um, because in the next fight, you had to fight Buzzkill. And I mean, I will be honest, up to this point, I was sure that Liam was going to win the 12s in that event. I mean, that robot has just gotten so dialed in, it's so good. Obviously not that Promheta isn't, but it's just, when you see a builder and you feel like they've got the eye of the tiger, and that's kind of how I felt. What was your strategy going into that fight with Liam? I mean, was it any different strategy than what you normally have?
Not really, but Liam really tried to break my strategy and make me try to abort. What Liam does really well is his shark circling. And there's a couple times in the fight where you see me go, oh no, because I couldn't keep up with his movement. And I'm always trying to keep the front end of my robot pointed at his weapon. So if he ever makes a turn in, that I'm already lined up. Um, but like, it was like 45 seconds of just trying to dial in the first hit. And I'd say hands down, that's like the hardest fight I've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, it is really tough, because in that situation, nobody wants to necessarily be the one to make the wrong move, because you do anything and, like, you leave yourself so exposed. And I think you're both such amazing drivers that it's really hard for either of you to even make a mistake. But I mean, you ended up coming out on top and getting the tap out on that one, which was super impressive. It's interesting though, because I feel like at that point, a lot of people just wanted to see Promheta versus Maximizer. It just felt like that was what the public was demanding at that point. And I mean, Jake is always super, like, dialed in and ready. Obviously, like, he's a very passionate guy, and wanted to obviously win the dumpster. Did you have any special strategy against Jake?
So when I fought him at World Champs, I kind of dialed in a strategy for him that nobody else has really replicated yet. So it's more of trying to bait him into exposing himself, thinking he's safe to attack. However, on the very first hit, he proved that strategy wrong and ripped off my front armor. Ultimately, like I was trying to replicate the World Champs situation, but that couldn't happen. So I got really lucky that his wheel just kind of fell off early on, because that was not me induced. That was something weird happening in my favor.
Yeah, and really, I have to say that that fight in particular had one of the craziest like turn of events of the way that it happened. I mean, I have to believe, and like you can obviously tell me that you were definitely in a not giving up attitude, and you were just going to keep trying, and fortunately in the end things swung in your favor. Were you nervous about the judge's decision at all? I mean, I like watching it, I felt pretty certain that you were going to get the win, but I don't know how you felt about it.
The moment my weapon came back, I knew I won it. But until that point, it was me trying to do everything I could to just try to show aggression as much as I could. I did make a very crucial error in that fight. So at the time, I didn't know Jake's weapon was off whenever mine went off. So we had to hit weapon to weapon, and my robot like flipped backwards, and the weapon shut off. I didn't even try the weapon again. I totally thought it was killed and that we had broke it on each other, and I was totally okay with that. So I didn't try it. And then like 23 seconds left, I was like, click, and it just goes.
Well, that was very fortunate for you, that you did, because I don't know what would have happened if if that didn't click back on. So, I mean, just an amazing job. That win had to feel really good, considering that you were coming in and not feeling like you were fully prepared.
It's fun to compete. I mean, that's overall why I keep going back and chasing certain record holders. Maybe I'll do it, but I've got my own 12-pound ones I could be happy of, and then keep trying to push them further.
Yes, for sure. Now you've obviously qualified, you've got a dumpster, but I know you, and I know that that doesn't mean that you're going to rest on that until finals comes along. Probably, but what's your plan for the rest of the year?
I'm fighting at Moto with Rita here in this week, and then, or depending on when this episode comes out. And then I'm competing at March NHRL with Promheta. So maybe could double dumpster. I don't expect to, but yeah, then after that we can figure it out. But I'm just gonna keep attacking robot events for a little while.
I mean, you might as well continue the momentum where it left off. And you've had some luck in March, so I mean, it could continue.
Yeah, gotta see what happens.
Definitely. Well, I mean, I'm excited to see it. I think, Promhead is one of those robots that I think at any given event it can win. I know you know that, but I think a lot of people definitely see it as one of those kinds of robots. So we'll see how March goes for sure. But awesome. Well, for people that are watching this, the fun is going to continue in this episode as we delve into everything with 30 pounds, and talking to Justin with Undertaker. So stay tuned for more. All right. As everybody knows, we save the biggest and best for last when we're talking about NHRL recaps, which is 30 pounds. And when I looked at the February tournament, really, I couldn't think of anybody else to interview except for Justin with Undertaker, because I just thought it was such an amazing story to see this robot kind of come out of nowhere and go up against Chonky in the finals. So Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm sure that you've already been asked this, but going into the February event, did you have any thoughts or any designs on like getting to the finals against Chonky? Did you think that was something that would happen?
Initially when I saw like the roster for him, I wasn't really concerned until I saw like stuff like Synthesis 30 and then Chonkiv came along, and then I saw who I was going to actually be fighting first day. So I started panicking in that last like 2 or 3 weeks, and I started ordering other stuff to make new configurations. But yeah, I was pretty stressed about who was in the February comp.
I mean, the 30-pound bracket was stacked. This is something that I talked about, I think, a little bit in the preview for the event. So, yeah, I mean, there were a lot of really tough robots. Kind of going into the preliminary, before you even get into the bracket and stuff, kind of how were you feeling at that point going into that, getting the first fight or two under your belt?
Well, usually these like robotics competitions I go to, as I continue on with the robot, I grow more confident in like what I'm able to do with the robot, as opposed to at the very beginning. So even though my confidence was still growing, I knew that the bracket was going to get tougher and tougher. So like, I just had to like mentally prepare for that as I went along.
Yeah, and I understand. I'm very much the same way when I'm competing, that it's like once you get further along, you really start to believe. And so I get that for sure. Now, your first opponent when you got into the bracket was Kazal Light, which has been really effective. I mean, the flamethrowers, I think a lot of people always have a hesitancy or like a fear to go up against, because they can really do a lot of damage if the flames get into the robot. What were your thoughts facing Kazaa, and what did you do to prepare for that?
Well, initially when I saw them in the bracket, I was like, oh God, all my electronics are cooked. I like if you look at Undertaker, a lot of it is plastic, right? So in order to prepare for that, I had bought like this flame-proof like gold tape on Amazon or something. So my goal was like, all right, I'm just gonna wrap the entire robot in this tape. We'll see where that gets us. And I ended up having to go with like my lightest forks because Undertaker's really close to the weight limit. Like I think I weighted at 29.98 pounds with that configuration. So like I had to go with the lighter forks in order to make weight for that entire tape roll that I used. But but going into the Kazaa light fight, I was really expecting the robot to just burn up and just die in the middle of the arena in a ball of fire.
And you ended up getting them to tap. So I thought that was pretty good. I mean, again, you mentioned confidence, like a win against a robot like that, I think really had to have you feeling good, maybe a little bit scared for your future opponents, but it still, I'm sure, had to leave you feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, I was pretty amazed at this. I beat this like multi-bot kind of flamethrower. But yeah, I felt really good after that match.
Right. And not only that, but I mean, at that point, because for 30s, it's, once you get into the bracket, it's not like you have a long path to qualify like they do for 3 pounds. You win a fight and you qualify. So for you, knowing at that point that you had qualified, how were you feeling about that?
I felt, well, two things. I felt really relieved that I had made it that far, but also I was terrified of what is to come because like, I make it past qualifiers, right? I still got champions to go to, and I know that all the bots over there are going to be extremely tough to fight. and I'm gonna have to work on redesigning it. Like Undertaker's story will not end like after that point. I realize that, so like I'm gonna have to make improvements as I go along. But yeah.
For sure. Which, speaking of, your next opponent was Vorion. And I mean, Vorion is, really, Brandon designs just incredible robots. I mean, he's really just made some great robots, Vorion being one of them. And, I think it had maybe had a tough match earlier in the day, but it's still, despite that, a scary robot to go up against. What was your plan? I mean, are you kind of the kind of person that like goes over and checks out the other robot to try and strategize and try and come up with a plan?
For usually not really, because I'm in the pits like scrambling to get the robot like working for the next match and just swapping batteries and all that. But my strategy going into the Vorion fight was to go head first, because Undertaker's rear front is designed to be the strongest point, the robot. Any hit to the sides, or especially the back or anything, is like absolutely detrimental to the robot. So my hope was to go for the box rush first and just see what happens from there.
Yeah, sometimes that's the best plan. Maybe not against every robot, but sometimes that's the best plan. And certainly it worked out for you. I mean, getting a knockout against a robot like that is incredible. But of course, getting that win also meant that you had to fight Chonkiv, which I think at the point that I was kind of analyzing this event, I was not aware yet that that robot was in the field. And as soon as I heard that they had entered, I was like, oh boy, that's going to be just a fun day for everybody else. What were you thinking? Like knowing what that robot can do?
So funny you should mention that. Early in the day, I was supposed to fight them for the second match after Slammel before prime time. I forfeited that match because I didn't want my robot to be completely annihilated. And I ended up having to fight them anyway. So like, well, at least it's the last match. So I'll try and go all out on that. But going into the fight, I was like really, really nervous that the robot's frame would get warped to high hell. Like the wedge I brought, it was mainly for like just like lighter horizontal spinners, if you will, like nothing chunky 45-pound shuffler kind of deal. And the wedge I brought, it was really like a last minute solution. It was like I had it made like last week for comp, so it had like button heads poking out and everything. It just really was not designed too well, but it was still something I needed to put up there. But going to the match, I was pretty terrified of what was to come. Yeah.
I mean, it certainly, if I'm recalling when I was watching it, I was thinking this reminds me of one of those fights that like is going okay until the point when it's not. Because they hit really hard, and it's just you never know when that hit's going to happen. And I mean, I think that you gave it a great effort. They are a very difficult team to fight. So I mean, I'm sure though that after that you were still feeling good, even though you didn't end up winning the dumpster in the end.
Yeah, even though it was like a David versus Goliath fight where David lost, I was still really happy that Undertaker went up against like the rank 1 robot in 30 pounds. So something I really didn't expect. To make it that far, I was quite happy at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now, given that we were just talking about the fact that you qualified, is there anything specific at this point? I mean, we have a long time until finals, but is there anything specific that you're thinking about working on for Undertaker, especially considering, there's also a possibility that you could have to fight Chonkiv again at finals?
Oh, yeah, there's quite a lot. The main thing really is I'm gonna have to rework the geometry of my wedge. Let's just sticking a flat piece up front, like a 1/8 inch AR steel is not enough. Also, I'm gonna have to be reworking the like the way I position my my drive gearbox, because somehow after that hit when Chonky, like the one hit that dished out on Undertaker, it took out one of my gearboxes, which is why I was driving in circles. It didn't even receive a direct hit. I still don't know really what caused that, but I'm gonna have to take a look at that and fix that up. But I'm also gonna need to what do I need to do? Oh, I'm gonna need to rework like different configurations as well, because Undertaker is mainly for like verts or horizontal, and just like your traditional bots. It can't really fight top hitters because I don't have any of the weight to put top armor on that robot. So I'm gonna have to find a way to slim down the weight of Undertaker if I'm gonna make it to finals, because I know there will be some big top attack hitters.
Yes, absolutely. That's gonna be a for sure thing. I'm really curious because I always like to understand the lore behind robots and stuff. Where did you come up with the name Undertaker? Like, does it have anything to do with the WWE wrestler, or is it just a coincidence that that is the name?
So Undertaker is well, 90% of it is just a cool name, but also like it mainly needs to get underneath its opponent in order to do anything, as hinted by like the big front wedge up there. But yeah, it's mainly just a cool name, really.
Okay, I just wondered because I was saying to myself as I was watching the event, I was like, yeah, like I again, if you don't watch WWE, you're not going to understand that, but any of my audience who does is going to understand this. Is I was like, I need Justin's dad to dress up as Paul Bearer and walk around with an urn. Because Undertaker. Yeah, that was a funny thought that had occurred to me during that. I'm also curious too with, this is a 30 pounder. I mean, it's hard to design at that level. Why did you decide to kind of dive into the biggest robot that there is at NHRL?
Well, with the 30-pound bracket, so I go to U of I, right? We have our own competition here. It's called Robo Brawl. We also hold, this is a 30-pound competition here as well. So my idea was that I wanted to design something that I could compete with here and also at NHRL. So the 30-pound bracket seemed like really good to go for.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I think anybody who's a builder knows that if you can design something that you're going to be able to utilize at multiple competitions, that's probably the best way to go in terms of getting your values worth out of it for sure. Um, is this kind of your primary project at this point, or have you tossed any other robot ideas around or anything like that?
Undertaker's as of right now, it's my own personal project, but I do work on other like robots and like our Clark like iRobotics clubs. Like for example, we have like each class builds like their own robot. I'm part of the sophomore team, and we're cooking something up for that team as well.
Awesome. And if I'm remembering correctly, Robo Brawl is going to be in April. Is that right?
April 4th and 5th.
Awesome. Yeah. For those that are watching, I know this is slightly off topic, but I've heard it's going to be a cool event. So if you are local to the Chicago area, you definitely should check it out, just as a side note. Well, that is awesome. I'm personally really excited to see Undertaker come back because I love a good, robot coming out of nowhere story. And I thought just it looked so amazing at the event. I'm really curious to see what things you do to bring it further and, what it's going to look like at finals. Are you planning on trying to come back to NHRL at all this year, or are you kind of waiting till finals? Because I know for myself personally, it's kind of a haul to travel out from the Midwest.
Yeah, that's the main reason. It's quite expensive to go there, but I'm just gonna go to finals. I'm probably not gonna be able to make it any other event, fortunately.
Yep, I know the feeling. Well, that's awesome, Justin. I hope that everybody watching this really enjoyed the February NHRL event. And if you didn't watch it, shame on you and go back and watch it because it was a really good event. So please check that out. If you're watching, please make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, share, all of those good things. Please keep supporting combat robotics and STEM and all of that stuff because it's so important. And we'll see everybody next time on the show.